live stream, which is otherwise known as the Ask Us Anything, Let's Just Hang Out and Chat live stream. So anything you want to talk about when it comes to Freemasonry, any thoughts you have, positive, negative, or neutral, let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. And we can just talk. Like I said, I got a trip this weekend going to beautiful Chicago. We have a long weekend here in Canada, at least here in Ontario, and Manitoba for that matter. Um, and a few other places. I think most places in Canada are celebrating a long weekend, the first weekend of August, which means I'm going to take advantage of it, travel to Chicago, see a whole bunch of my Masonic friends, my Masonic brethren, be in a place I love, talking about, supporting and celebrating Freemasonry. There are 4 Masonic events happening this weekend, all on the same day. August 2nd, and then August 3rd, I'm going to see some buddies for breakfast. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great week. Great weekend, I should say. Busy. My hope is to take part in 5 events on Saturday. Sorry, 6 events on Saturday. 4 of which are Masonic, and they are all kind of in and around the Chicago area. That's going to include, what I'm looking forward to probably the most is going to a baseball game, Joliet Slammers baseball game for a Masonic recognition night. What is up, your local Spurs fan? How is it going? I hope that your day is going well. Don't forget, Spurs fan, if you're not done so yet and you're interested, you can support me on Patreon. You can support me for free. You don't have to spend any money. Just join the free Patreon. But I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. This Friday is just kind of a hangout, Ask Us Anything stream. So anything you want to chat about, let me know. I don't know how long I can do this stream for because I do have to get packed and get ready shortly. Like I said, I'm leaving tonight. I'm taking the all-night bus in order to be in Chicago tomorrow for 5:45. One of my favorite things is arriving in Chicago at 5 in the morning, getting the chance to see kind of the city come alive. Right? The beautiful thing about Chicago is the way, like when I was in New York, it felt like the city just never stopped. It was always going. It got to be a little bit much. Chicago, it rests at night, and then, especially if you're downtown in the Loop, it comes alive in the morning. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. That sounds like it makes sense, but that's how I kind of feel. So what about you, Spurs fan? Do you guys, because I don't believe you guys in the States get a long weekend like we do here in Ontario. But are you getting a long weekend this weekend? And if you are you going to be taking advantage of it and doing anything, hanging out, having fun? Or even without a long weekend, what are some of your plans for the weekend? Looking forward to it? And we're just going to see who else jumps on to say hello. Nothing's wrong with that, actually. I think that makes a lot of sense because that way you can kind of relax and look forward to. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. That's a good way to live your life, I think, is to not. Just kind of go with the flow. It's a good approach to take. We're just going to give it a bit of time. We're going to see who jumps on, who says hello. Anything you guys want to chat about in the meantime, please let me know. This is the Friday stream. So these streams really are the Ask Us Anything, let's just hang out and chat streams, which are a lot of fun. I enjoy doing them quite a bit. Gets a chance to hang out and see what you want to talk about. Any questions about Freemasonry or thoughts or comments, let me know. This weekend, 6 p.m. Sunday, we have our next episode being released, talking about the Mask of Red Death, which is, if I can get this off, there we go, which is one of my favorite stories, and how and why I think it can apply to Freemasonry, which a lot of people maybe don't think it would, but I assure you, I believe there are a lot of different kind of Masonic themes within the Mask of the Red Death that we can apply in Freemasonry as well as in our life. I'll be back in just one moment. Just got to go plug something in. I'm not going too far, I promise. And I'm back. Part of getting ready for a trip is plugging all your stuff in, making sure all of your items are charged. I've talked about this before, like how I travel as a Freemason. Because Masonic travel, a lot of people don't realize, Masonic travel is in and of itself a unique form of travel. It's not the same as traveling for work or traveling for, a family vacation. There are things you need to keep in mind when you are traveling for Freemasonry that are unique and different than, again, when you're traveling for whatever else you're traveling for. Masonic travel is travel, so you need to keep in account things like passports, vaccinations requirements, visa requirements, customs. You need to think about all of those things. Then on top of that, you need to think about things like visitation, Masonic identification, recognition. All those things matter as well. So I've talked in the past about the necessity of understanding what Masonic travel is and how it works. And I can talk about that again on this stream a little bit. But in the meantime, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We are here to chat about Freemasonry. So anything you want to talk about when it comes to Freemasonry, let me know. This is an Ask Us Anything Hangout stream. So ask me anything and hang out. Any plans for a long weekend? I'd love to know about that. And if you have any plans for a long weekend, if you even get a long weekend. I'm going to be checking out, amongst other things, a baseball game, the Joliet Slammers. Why do people say that Freemasonry is evil? I mean, so I do want to... what's the word I'm looking for? Push back slightly on that. I know what you're saying, that taco guy, and you're right. There are some people who say that Freemasonry is evil. In my experience, it's actually a smaller number than we sometimes think. I think social media can, unfortunately, greatly increase the perception that people have that feeling. Right? It's a small number of people expressing that idea over and over and over again, which I think is unfortunate. There's a lot of different reasons. First, because Freemasonry is a private society, or in some ways, secret society, although it's really more of a society with secrets. It was an easy target for conspiracy theorists, including, as well as political groups looking to create different types of enemies, right? So, for example, Nazi Germany, right? Hitler famously linked Freemasonry to Jewish people as part of some grand conspiracy. And then people who are struggling within their own lives will latch on to that and then use Freemasonry as a be-all, end-all kind of excuse for problems in the world or problems within their own lives. Um, and a lot of times it just makes people feel good to find an enemy to attack. Makes it feel as though they have, they have some type of control. Conspiracy theories are very popular, and again, when you have a private society and when there are secrets within that we don't share outside of Freemasonry, that creates a natural target for some of these guys, and a lack of understanding of what Freemasonry is. Hitler had a lot of issues, and his hatred of Freemasonry is very low down on the list of the number of issues he had, obviously. However, I will say again, I've talked about this before, there were Freemasons, many Freemasons were, found themselves within concentration camps during World War II. There's actually one Masonic lodge, Cherished Liberty, that was formed within a concentration camp. So anybody who says that their life is hard, or that they're too busy for Freemasonry, if they can create if they can create a Masonic lodge within a concentration camp, then I think that we can dedicate more time to Freemasonry. Well, let's hear it. Maybe it's correct, maybe it's incorrect. I don't know what you heard that's shocking, but let's hear it. And Smokey, welcome, by the way. Thank you for being here. And to everybody who's joined, welcome once again. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, etc., etc., etc. Right, all the things you have to say. It looks like Masonic author Frank Conway, in a book reviewing the history of the current practice of rituals for both the Northern Masonic jurisdiction and the Southern Masonic jurisdiction, because Scottish Rite has two jurisdictions, a Northern and a Southern, describes the Knight Kadosh degree as involving 3 skulls, one with the crown, one with the Pope's tiara, and one wrapped in laurel leaves. Interesting. Actually, I would read that book. If you're interested in learning more about that degree, one of the good places to go would be Frank Conway. He's PhD. He's a 33rd degree Mason, or 33rd degree Scottish Rite. He wrote a book called The Masonic Pageant, forward by Chris Hoda. That'd be a good place to learn more about the 30th degree. I do not know what louche is. If it's dirty, don't say, because we could end up, Oh, I just looked it up on Google. Louche is a term primarily used in esoteric and spiritual contexts to describe a type of energy or life force that is believed to be generated by sentient beings, particularly humans. So you're farming the life force from humans? Try not to farm my life force, if at all possible. I would much appreciate it. I guess it's like, I have no idea what Garmonbozia is. I'm learning a lot of words I've never heard before. Oh, it's from David Lynch. Okay, I should know that because I love Mulholland Drive is one of my favorite books. My favorite movies is Mulholland Drive, up there as well as Lost Highway and Inland Empire. So I guess, yeah, it's the substance that spirits, particularly those in the Black Lodge, consume. Well, there you go. What I would do potentially, though, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, is if you want to learn more about the 30th degree, what I would suggest is checking out, once again, the Masonic Pageant, The Scottish Rite degrees at the Supreme Council. You can order it online. It's written by Frank Conway. He's a PhD. He talks about all the degrees and what they reference. Um, I can speak to more the first 18 degrees, or the ones I went through, but the 30th degree, um, I'm not consistory. Welcome, Red Squid X-Files. Peace and salutations to you as well, and thank you for being here. So why would you say that? I'm not going to confirm nor deny anything about a hoodwink, but why would you why would you say that it's a foolish and gullible thing to do? Uh, who's they and who says more light? I mean, do you mean during degrees? Do you mean more metaphorical? The idea of light as knowledge? Um, that's a very vague statement. All right, Face, I'm gonna have to put you in a bit of a timeout. I do not know what you mean when you say more. I mean, so in Freemasonry, I'm not going to expose secrets. There is the idea of desiring light as a metaphor for knowledge or understanding, but that is a metaphor that exists within many organizations throughout. I mean, the idea of light as a metaphor is not a particularly new thing. Um, the idea of wanting light, there's a part in Freemasonry where we talk about that. I've never heard the phrase more light, but just the idea of wanting light, that is something that comes in part of the degree, but that's a metaphor for knowledge, right? Many organizations and groups use the idea of light as, even myths like Prometheus, bringing fire to man, right? That was the idea of bringing knowledge, bringing light to man. There you go, Dad. You found me today. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. Please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button. Everybody watching this, including you, Lush Farmer. But I hope you're doing well. But why is, welcome coffee stained. Wonderful. I'm not sure, because I mean, Smokey, I have seen others on the stream. What I find is trolls mostly will jump on and say, usually, honestly, it's weirdly sexual things or like gross things or racist things as a way to just piss you off. When he's saying stuff specifically about Freemasonry, it strikes me as probably somebody who Lush farmers just spend a lot of time on X or other social media sites seeing negative things about Freemasonry. And he may just, like the CUM dash face, that to me is clearly a troll with a name like that. With Lush, he may just genuinely believe Freemasonry is not a good thing, in which case, what I'd say is I'd hope that he would let me know why he feels that way. Especially because, I'm really curious when he says, um, of course you would say that let him hoodwink you is the most stupid, foolish, and gullible human man. I'm curious as to why he thinks that, why he thinks trusting others, trusting, anybody, but let's say trusting Freemasons, just giving up a level of your own control and trusting others is stupid and foolish. I think honestly, it's one of those things where if human beings were more willing to trust others and more willing to, accept certain lessons, things would be a lot better. Yes, we had a promise of I'm going to be getting some coffee sent to me. As I said, my favorite coffee, and I still stand by this. My favorite coffee is Dunkin' Donuts. Although, probably from a moral perspective, my favorite coffee might be Black Rifle. because of the work they do supporting veterans and veterans causes. But nonetheless, when I said my favorite coffee was Dunkin' Donuts, I was told that I had to get some real coffee sent to me. So it's on my way. Oh, Dunkin' Donuts is the best coffee. I stand by that. Keeps on ticking. Who is rich? So Lush Farmer, you can't see all of Lush Farmer's statements. I can see them, but others, but I can see them. He said, "You think those rich scumbags like you." So I assume he's saying that Freemasons are rich, which right off the bat, there are some rich Freemasons, but by and large, most of the Freemasons I know are not rich. They're not poor. They're just kind of average or middle class, I guess. But we have Freemasons of all sorts of economic backgrounds, from wealthier to poor to everywhere in between. I've never seen any evidence that Freemasonry trends or tends toward rich membership or richer memberships. Smokey, I hate y'all. You can still drink coffee. I can still drink coffee. Sorry, coffee. Sorry, Smokey. I know you can't, but I can still drink coffee, and I'm going to be getting some Dunkin' Donuts this weekend, which I can't wait. So Lush Farmer said they love useful idiots. Again, assuming the useful idiot is me. But who is the they in that? Because I would be in a leadership position within Freemasonry. Uh, right? I've been a worshipful master in the past, and I'm currently a worshipful master. So wouldn't the they be me? Wouldn't I be one of the quote unquote the theys? Um, I hope you are doing well, also a raised eyebrow, right? So who is the they to which you refer? Is it a group within Freemasonry which I'm not aware of, or which I've never seen, despite my significant experience in Freemasonry? Yes, Coke in Mexico tastes better than Coke made in the United States. Um, Coca-Cola, for the record. Well, because if he uses any type of swears or F words, or just like uses the phrase useful idiots, or just idiots in general, YouTube will hide the statement. I'll be able to see it, but anything that YouTube deems as like potentially insulting or with vulgarity or profanity, I can see it, but the general stream can't. So to try to keep the stream PG related, right? So. Oh yeah, and honestly, on the same subject, Mexican coffee is better than Mexican coffee is a lot better than United States coffee. Again, my favorite's still Dunkin' Donuts, but when I was in Mexico and Puerto Vallarta, I loved the coffee uh, in Mexico a lot. The Freemasonic inner circle worshiping the three-headed. It's interesting, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, because that came up in one of my favorite movies, From Hell, right? Where I can't think of the um uh the writing on the wall, right? I mean, to my understanding, Jabulon is actually located in Royal Arch Freemasonry. I don't necessarily believe it's in all the jurisdictions. But I think, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, I think that is kind of, the words you use there, I think are really important. I think it kind of goes to a misunderstanding of Freemasonry, which I think to a certain extent Lush Farmer may have as well. Uh, right, the idea of there being an inner circle. So, for example, to my knowledge, Jabulon is part of, and I could be mistaken about this, but is part of the York Rite, which is an appendant body of Freemasonry, right? So it's an appendant body of Freemasonry in the same way Scottish Rite is an appendant body of Freemasonry. However, um, York Rite does not have any control or say over what happens in my craft lodge. So nobody from York Rite could come to my Masonic lodge, where I'm the master, which is Border Cities, and say, we are part of the inner circle of Freemasonry, right? Therefore, you have to do this, or you have to do that, or this is the way it is, right? There are different bodies, and same thing with the Shriners, same thing with Scottish Rite, even me. So I'm an 18th degree Scottish Rite Mason. That doesn't mean I can go to a, craft lodge and say I'm 18th degree, so I'm, 6 times the Mason of a 3rd degree, right? We don't get any, there are no inner circles. There are different Masonic rites, different Masonic orders, different parts of the Masonic family, but no one has any, control over any other, if that makes sense, right? So even, we talked about a 30th degree Mason, right? When I was a 3rd degree Master Mason, well, I still am, but as a 3rd degree Master Mason, right? If a 30th degree Scottish Rite Mason came to my lodge, he would not be 10 times the Mason I am, nor would he have any authority or, he would not have any authority in the craft lodge. The 3rd degree Master Mason who is worshipful master of the lodge would have more authority in the lodge than a 30th degree Scottish Rite Freemason. So I don't know if that makes sense, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. So there is no kind of inner circle or outer circle within Freemasonry. Get back to work, Smokey, but thank you so much for being here. Right? It is different orders. A good way to think of it, maybe, and Lush, I'll talk to you in 1 second. I promise I'm not ignoring you. I just want to make sure I get this point out. A good way to think of it, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, I hope that this makes sense. At your job, let's say you have an office job, right? You work for whatever. You work for a law firm. Well, in that law firm, you may have a section of the law firm that deals with criminal law. You may have a section that deals with corporate law. You may have a section that deals with divorce law. You may have sections that don't deal with law at all, that deal with human resources or whatever it is. But it's not an inner circle, outer circle. It's just different departments, different groups. And, the person in charge of the criminal law firm or criminal part of the law couldn't then go to corporate law and be in charge as well, right? Even if, let's say, the criminal lawyer has been a lawyer for 30 years. Or even, I'm going to take the idea and switch it slightly. Freemasonry is like just the legal community. So the president of a law firm, of like law firm A, has no authority if he, walks in the offices of law firm B, because they're different firms. There's no inner circle. It's just different communities within Freemasonry. I hope that made sense, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, right? So again, it's this idea of, there, again, to my understanding, there are Masonic degrees where, Jabulon is part of it, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly. However, it's not an inner circle because they have no authority in a craft lodge. And again, when you brought up a 30th degree Freemason, a 30th degree Freemason has no authority in a craft lodge. He is no better or worse a Mason, or no higher up a Mason than the 3rd degree Mason. They're both equal. Lush Farmer says that's what they tell you. That's what they tell me, because that is true. And that's not just what they tell me. That is what I have observed based on my experience as a Freemason. I've been a Mason since 2007. So approximately 20 years. I've been to over 1,000 Masonic meetings or Masonic events in 5 continents: United States, well, North America, South America, the Philippines, um, or five. I can't do math. 4 continents: North America, South America, the Philippines, and Europe. And so I feel like I've seen enough Freemasonry, and I've seen enough meetings where you have 30th degree Masons or 32nd degree Masons sitting with third degree Masons, and I've seen the fact that they do not have any additional authority, based upon their degree. To understand, right, that it's not a matter of who has more or less authority, or anything to that extent. Lush Farmer mentioned the Three Ruffians. Three Ruffians are an important part of Masonic, I guess, lore, if you want to call it that. Which again, you see that also in From Hell, one of my favorite movies not about Freemasonry, but one of my favorite movies to feature Freemasonry. So once again, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. Just let me know if what I said makes sense, and if you can understand why I may be kind of push back against the term inner circle, right? There are no Masonic inner circles. There's just different communities and different degrees and different parts of the family, but they are all equal to the other, and they don't have, any more or less authority. Let me know if that made sense. And we're just going to wait to see who joins, right? Please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button, especially if you're new to the stream. Lush, let me know if what I said made sense to you. I know you disagree. Okay, cool. So again, Lush, I would disagree with. Oh, well, there you go. Because I mean, that term Jabulon, I don't know a lot about it. I've heard it in reference to the York Rite, but it's not something that I know a ton about. See, Lush, I would disagree with the way you describe. I would disagree with your use of the term inside, right? There are orders within Freemasonry, but there are no orders within orders, if that makes sense. So again, the York Rite order is not an order that exists within the Craft Lodge order or Craft Lodge Freemasonry. It's an appendant or separate body. Same thing with Scottish Rite. Same thing with Order of Women Freemasons, youth groups, Shrine. It's better to think of it as there's an umbrella term, which is called Freemasonry, and then underneath that umbrella term, there's a whole bunch of different and yet equal orders. So, for example, and I consider them all equal, whether that be Scottish Rite, York Rite, Craft Lodge, Order of Women Freemasons, youth groups, Shrine. I consider them all equal to each other. You can stay in the Craft Lodge for as long as you'd like. I know many. Well, that's true. There are some orders that you need to be a third degree Mason first to then join them, including the Shrine, for example. But that doesn't grant them more authority, or that doesn't grant them any authority over a Craft Lodge. The Craft Lodge, again, a Master Mason, third degree, who is a worshipful master, has more authority in his Masonic Lodge than a 32nd degree Scottish Rite. So as my dad says, like most Masons, although I know a lot of Masons never advance beyond the third degree, or advance not the right term, never join any Masonic bodies outside of or after the third degree. They're happy to stay as a Craft Lodge, and they, again, they are as well respected as a 32nd degree Mason in many cases, sometimes more respected. So you can stay in a Craft Lodge for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years exclusively, which is perfectly fine. When you say, what do you do in a Craft Lodge? Actually, Craft Lodge typically refers, almost always, to be honest. Again, I can't speak to every jurisdiction. They sometimes have their own terms. but almost always refers to the first 3 degrees in Freemasonry: entered apprentice, fellow craft, master mason. In terms of advancement, what you do in a craft lodge is hold the degrees that advance a mason from the first to the 3rd degree. In most jurisdictions, you need to be a 3rd-degree Mason to hold offices in lodge. And then after that, you do what you do in any other social or fraternal order, right? You engage in charitable activities, you engage in social activities, you engage in Masonic education, you also engage in administrative tasks to maintain the lodge, such as paying bills, making sure the building is up to code, reading correspondence, debating changes to bylaws, making sure that, if there's a brother who is sick or is ill or needs help, you go and assist him, or his family needs help, you go and assist the family, right? And then you engage in the ritual to form bonds of brotherhood between your membership. I always say, right, what you do in Freemasonry, or the fundamental kind of understanding of Freemasonry, is is a belief that the world can be made better through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. So what we try to do is make the world a better place through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. And we start by doing that within our lodges, but then hopefully that carries over to the communities as a whole. What about the 3 ruffians, Lush Farmer? Other than they were 3 ruffians, right? Part of Masonic lore. Right? But as Dad says, it's not about being higher degrees or being more inside the order or having the inner degrees, right? That's not what it's about. It's just about being interested in learning different things about Freemasonry. Well, didn't know what? I know to whom you're referring, and I know, how they are referenced within Masonic ritual, and which I'm not going to say, and the story behind them. They are, again, they are part of Masonic lore, and part of our Masonic rituals, right? I'm not going to share information as to who they are, although again, if you watch the movie From Hell, it actually references who they are. So, but I take all Masonic ritual as being, again, the purpose of it first and foremost is to form bonds of brotherhood through shared experience. But I also take it in some ways metaphorical. I think what they represent ultimately is the desire to gain knowledge and understanding before you are entitled to it or before you are deserving of it. And that desire is very dangerous. It's the desire to advance before you're ready or before you're capable, which is a good lesson, right? Nowadays, I think in 2025, but maybe throughout all time, people, it's like they want it right now. They want the knowledge right now. They want the wisdom right now. They don't want to put in any work for it, right? Freemasonry is a progressive science, or progressive, I should say. The whole point of it is not that you join and suddenly you know everything. It's like being a stonemason. If I want to learn how to make things out of stone, how to work with stone, I'm not going to, show up on day one and expect to be a master stone mason. It takes time and effort and learning. In Freemasonry, it's the same thing, right? It's about learning and not wanting to know everything right away, but taking your time with it. Well, but again, who is the they, right? Like, who is the they to which you refer? Because I know, for example, that there are some Masonic secrets I don't know because I've chosen not to pursue them. So, for example, I choose not to join York Rite because I'm very busy. I don't have the time for it right now. That doesn't mean that they, the York Rite, are keeping secrets from me. for out of nefarious reasons. It's just because I'm not a member of the York Rite Order, so I'm not entitled to those secrets. In the same way, I'm not entitled to the secrets beyond the 18th degree because I'm not choosing not to join that yet. It's an apprenticeship, right? But you say like they, it's like I know the they to whom you refer, they're my friends, they're my brothers, they're part of my Masonic family. But I would never go to a York Rite Mason who's a friend of mine. In fact, one of my best friends is a York Rite Mason. I would never go to him and say, tell me the secrets of the York Rite, because that's not my place, right? That's not my, it's not my place to know, because I chose not to join that order, right? It's like Lush Farmer, you keep secrets from me, right? Like you're not going to tell me your social insurance number or your bank number or your tax information. You're not going to tell me any information you don't want to tell me. That's not Lush Farmer because of any nefarious purpose. It's because you have the right to maintain your kind of private information. So if you have the right to maintain your private information, are you one of the they who is keeping secrets from me? Or is there a valid reason for you to maintain those secrets, right? In your case, it's about your privacy and your security. In Freemasonry, it's about maintaining the secrets as a way to maintain the bonds of brotherhood between our membership, right? Like me and Harry are both Freemasons. We have a bond of brotherhood because we've both been through the ritual. If we start sharing secrets in the stream, it changes those bonds, right? And now we no longer have the same strength of bonds because now everybody has access to those same secrets and those same rituals. Any advice or new apprenticeship for anybody about to become a Freemason? My advice, the taco guy, used to be the Charles Bukowski poem, roll the dice or go all the way, right? Which was, if you're going to try, go, if you're going, how did he put it? I used to know that. I'm just looking it up now. If you're going to try, go, here he is. If you're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This can mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind. Go all the way. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It can mean freezing on a park bench. It can mean jail. It can mean derision or mockery. Isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the others are a test of your endurance, of how much you really want to do it. And you'll do it despite rejection and the worst odds, and it will be better than anything else you can imagine. If you're going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You'll be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. Do it, do it, do it, do it. All the way, all the way. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It's the only good fight there is. So, being a Freemason does not mean you will end up freezing on a park bench, nor will it mean jail, nor will it mean derision or mockery, except perhaps from Lush Farmer, nor will it mean isolation. But what I will say is, in my opinion, if you're going to do something and join, you should care enough to want to give it as much as you possibly can and to work as hard as you can. So if you're thinking of joining Freemasonry, I believe, especially at the start, you should be willing to dedicate yourself to it and try to be the best version of it that you can be, best version of Freemason you can be. While also, at the start especially, the most important thing is how well you get along with your Masonic brothers, how well you get along with the lodge, and just how much fun you have. You will get into the Masonic rituals and the history of the Grand Lodge of England and all that stuff later. At the start, just have fun and enjoy it. That's the key. I hope I'm making sense. I hope everything I'm saying is making sense. Let me know if it's not. That taco guy, I don't know what those emojis mean, but there you go. But just have fun at the start, you know. And like I said, I think whatever you do, you should enjoy it. I genuinely love that movie. It's an interesting question. I kind of view from hell. I kind of view in some ways, and I'm trying to think of how to say this and not spoil it, the Freemasons as kind of the heroes of that movie in some ways because they're kind of the good guys. They like a Freemason in that movie is maybe not a good guy, but the remainders, uh, uh, you know, I don't know. I don't want to spoil it. Here's what I'd say: watch the movie. After you've watched it, let me know, and then we'll talk about it after. But I've always loved that movie. And again, I'm not one of those people who I don't mind in a movie if Freemasons are kind of represented as potentially the bad guys or is represented as like I've never minded that. I take it all in good fun. Um, you would be if you watch From Hell and then you view that as being what Freemasonry is, you're going to be sorely disappointed and sorely bored if and when you join because it's not that. But in a movie, it's entertaining and it's fun, and I don't mind when I see us even in movies where the bad guy is a Freemason, like in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I still think it's fun. I take it all in good fun. And yeah, the three ruffians do make an appearance in the movie From Hell, starring Johnny Depp. Or they don't. They are referenced in the movie From Hell. So watch it. Let me know what you think. It is, like I said, it's one of my favorite movies in general. And in terms of movies that reference Freemasonry, it's one of my favorites for sure. It's in the trailer, so I think I can spoil it. But at one point, um, one of the characters says, they will look back and say, I gave rise to the 20th century. And Johnny Depp, as the inspector, responds, you will not live to see the 20th century. And I've always loved that line. I've not read the graphic novel, but I want to, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. I absolutely want to read that. I think he is. I believe he is. I'm not positive. I don't know for sure. So I can't say 100% he is or not, but I've heard on the internet that he is. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. But I've heard on the internet that he is. But, I mean, keep in mind, because I feel like you're bringing that up, because I think Prince Andrew was connected to Epstein or Epstein Island. Again, I'm basing this on the internet and what I've read, which you have to take with a grain of salt. Here's what I'll say, though, Lush Farmer. You need to keep in mind, unfortunately, or I guess maybe it's not unfortunately is the right word, unfortunately slash fortune, pick your term. Freemasons are human beings, right? And because Freemasons are human beings, if you want to find criminals who have also been Freemasons, you're going to find them. Freemasons make mistakes like anybody else, right? And sometimes Freemasons engage in evil act, but they're not engaging in that because of Freemasonry, right? Because, you will find the same criminals who are plumbers, who are football players, who are work at the library, who like any segment of society will have people in it who have committed terrible things, right? It's my hope and my belief that Freemasonry can reduce crime overall by providing both valuable lessons for its membership and providing civic engagement. But unfortunately, yeah, there are Freemasons who have committed horrible things. I think it's terrible. I think that they, show a complete lack of understanding of what Freemasonry is, and they may be joining because they believe that like it's a shame, but it's true that in almost every facet of life there are humans who have committed crimes. That's true for everything. That's true for people who work in the government. That's true for people who are Freemasons. That's true for Odd Fellows. That's true for people who work in the entertainment industry. That's true for, I'm sure, people who live in my building, right? But hopefully, if people were to, especially Freemasons, were to take the lessons of Freemasonry to heart, they would not, commit crimes. But unfortunately, Freemasonry is imperfect because human beings are imperfect, and human beings sometimes commit criminal acts, Freemasons or otherwise. I have never sat with any royals, at least to my knowledge. Who knows? Maybe I, at some point, have sat with the because I went to a lodge in England once. So maybe once upon a time, when I was sitting in a lodge in England, somebody was there who was like 250th in line for the throne or something. But to my knowledge, I've never sat with any royals. Oddfellows, well, you got to throw the Oddfellows under the bus. But no, because sometimes people will point out, like, so and so was a famous person, and they'll say he was also a Freemason and he was also a criminal. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that happens all the time, sadly. I'm sure there are many Freemasons who've broken the law. I wish they wouldn't, because I think it demonstrates a lack of respect for Freemasonry, as well as a lack of respect for, what Freemasonry instructs us. One of the things is to obey and be compliant with the laws of the country in which you live, and to be a good citizen, which I think is one of the best lessons of Freemasonry. However, like I said, I don't think it's fair that Freemasons catch all of it. When again, I bet you if you went through any organization or group, including the Oddfellows and the Elks and the Rotary and law firms and plumbers and football players and etc., etc., etc. And that's true as well. There have been Freemasons who committed crimes and then have been expelled from Freemasonry, along with dealing with whatever, criminal liabilities there may be, or civic liabilities. And I've known that to happen, where, he is removed from Freemasonry, and there is in almost every jurisdiction, to my knowledge, some type of caveat or some type of allowance that if a Mason is convicted of a terrible crime, they can be removed from Freemasonry altogether, as I believe they should be. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Thank you. I don't get what you're saying there, Lush Farmer. Forgive me. So if there are Freemasons, you can't really say Freemasons aren't running things. I mean, I don't know what that means. Like, for example, there are many lawyers who become politicians, right? Um, um, well, but I mean, do the royals run things? I mean, the royals don't run things in America. They don't run things in Canada. But even if, like, so for example, there are many lawyers who are politicians, but you wouldn't say lawyers run things, right? It's just an aspect. Politicians run things. Being a lawyer is an aspect of the individual politicians, and being a lawyer may influence how they view the world or how they choose to govern. But that doesn't mean lawyers run things, right? There are a lot of economists who are politicians. There are a lot of Catholics who are politicians. You wouldn't say the Catholic Church runs things. There are a lot of Christians who are politicians. There are a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Muslim people. Like Freemasonry may be, and because there are Masonic politicians, for example, there may be politicians who are Freemasons. That doesn't mean that Freemasons run things, right? Because it's a tiny, tiny percentage. That's a good point as well, Rondo. There, if you're on the outside looking in and you don't understand things, well, let's say the Oddfellows, you can infer criminality where none exists. I have no idea why it's called British Columbia, but are you saying that the Royals run Canada through our Governor General? I mean, why is it called New England, right? At one point, the British Empire expanded throughout the globe, and like New York, right? Like many places received British names or, had a British flavors. I'm trying to think of the term British iconography. I mean, the Ontario flag has a Union Jack on it. At no point have I ever felt as though the Queen slash King of England was governing or ruling my life in any way. And if he is, he's doing a very good job at hiding it, right? I honestly, even the Prime Minister, in a lot of ways, I don't feel that way. It seems to me that most of my life is governed and controlled by the mayor of the city of Windsor. Usually, local municipal government has far more control over people's lives than we give it credit for. Like Lush Farmer, and this is kind of stepping away from Freemasonry, but Lush Farmer, one of the mistakes I think you're making is you are grossly overestimating the the impact of, let's say, for example, the royal family on your life, or national governments, while at the same time grossly underestimating the impact of, let's say, municipal governments or municipal governance or the mayor. For 90% of people, for 90% of your life, the level of government that has the greatest impact on you is going to be municipal, right? And that's the mayor, that's city council, that's bylaw enforcement, that's school districts, right? That's in my experience truly where a great deal of influence and power actually lies. So Prince Andrew is not affecting your life to near the extent that the mayor of your town or your city is. That is true. Kent is a member of the British Empire, but again, I'm not concerned at all about. I mean, I'm proud to be a member of the British Empire, but I certainly don't feel that Prince Andrew is, ruling over my life in any way, or ruling over Canada, or Prince Charles, I should say. Excuse me. I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you for being here. Let's give it a bit more time. Let's see who else joins. As always, please hit the like and subscribe button. King Charles III. There we go. But like, I mean, oftentimes what I find with people who are kind of more conspiracy minded is they tend to conflate all the royals together. That can be true, Rondo. You're not wrong. Oftentimes you will find kind of petty tyrants flourishing in local politics. I love that expression, Lush Farmer. What's wrong with saying for king and country? I think for king and country is an expression of patriotism, and I support patriotism. Again, it's supporting the history of Canada, it's supporting the fact that we are monarchy, but I can say for king and country and still recognize and understand that the, quote unquote ruling of the country is done democratically by the prime minister. Right? Expressions are sometimes literal and sometimes metaphorical. And for prime minister and country does not sound as uplifting as for king and country. In fairness, Rondo, sometimes even Masonic lodges is where petty tyrants flourish. You got to be really careful if you're a Freemason and you become a worshipful master of a lodge, not to, it can be easy in those moments to let it go to your head a little bit, let the gavel go to your head. You have a responsibility to, you have a responsibility to, be a benevolent and democratic ruler in Freemasonry? Well, so for king and country, uh, is a Masonic toast in some jurisdictions and within some bodies, but it's not a standard Masonic toast. Like in my experience, that toast is usually in Commonwealth countries, and oftentimes it's actually not for king and country; it's for king and craft. Um, in America, I mean, that's not really to my knowledge, that's not really a toast they have in America. That's also not a toast that they have in Prince Hall Freemasonry, to my knowledge. Right? Again, I think one of the mistakes you're making, Lush Farmer, is you're assuming Freemasonry is like when you say this is a Freemason's toast, where you need to be understand it may be a toast in some jurisdictions, in some places, but not everywhere. Freemasonry is not the same everywhere, right? Freemasonry in Texas is different than Freemasonry in Ontario, is different than Freemasonry in England, is different than Freemasonry in Israel, is different than Freemasonry in Russia, than Brazil, than Massachusetts. So again, like I've given the toast for King and the Craft, for King and Country. Usually it's for King and Craft. I've given that toast in the past. I'm proud of giving that toast. I think it's a wonderful toast. But in the States, they don't do that. In the States, for example, one thing they do in many Masonic meetings, as well as many Masonic events, both public and private events, is give the Pledge of Allegiance. So it's just a different, um, the toasts, the structure is not the same everywhere. Again, Lush Farmer, who is they, right? Who be they? Because you keep saying they. I assume by they you mean an inner circle, but why is it that, I can never seem to meet this inner circle? Because I can understand if they are trying to purposefully hide from me, it would be tough. But at a certain point, if I'm at a significant enough number of meetings, you'd think I would run into this inner circle and recognize something nefarious happening, right? Like I would hope that my 20 years of experience would count for something, right? And my thousands of meetings attended. And also my willingness to admit I don't know everything. And I'm always trying to learn more, right? Would count for something in terms of what I have or haven't seen. Like I do feel like I think I might be a they. I'm either a they or I'm a useful idiot with Lush, which is fine. I'll take either. He is incorrect, but that's okay. Um, it's still fun to have him on the stream. And I still hope, even after this, he will hit the like and subscribe button. I don't know if you guys can hear, we got a dance party happening outside my apartment. They're getting ready for the long weekend with some festivals. I wish I could be here, but I'm going to be visiting my friends in Chicago. One of the best parts about Freemasonry is I can visit my friends everywhere. And it's fun. Like, the thing I love about it is, even though I said, like, for example, when I'm attending a meeting in Chicago, a Masonic meeting, there are differences than when I'm attending a meeting in Ontario, and I love those differences. One of my favorite things about Freemasonry is the fact that it's not the same everywhere, and that, I think, means there's always more to learn. Here in Ontario, we have a long weekend. Mr. Keeps on Ticking. We also have that long weekend in Manitoba, and I think in Canada, every province is celebrating a long weekend this weekend. I don't think you guys get it in the States, so you're not as cool as us. If you're from the States, I think you are, right? So deal with that. Sometimes it pays to be Canadian. I mean, right now we're going to be paying 35% more on goods and services from the States, but that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other can of tuna, which I'm hoping, again, Freemasons don't feel the crunch from that too much. I suspect a lot of us are going to be facing some financial challenges with it, but no, it's called Family Day, I think is what it's called. We don't have a Memorial Day in Canada. Right, because Memorial Day is for your veterans, right? In Canada, we have Remembrance Day, which is November 11th. Um, I know, right? We're just sitting here minding our own business. You're slapping us with tariffs. I'm still choosing though to visit America. There are some Canadians I know, including some Canadian Freemasons, who are saying they're not going to visit the States, not going to visit Masonic events in the States while there are these tariffs in place, while there is the current political climate. And I don't blame anybody for that. I understand kind of where and why they may feel that way, but it's not something because I think you have to separate the success of, or you have to separate a government from its people. You know, whatever is happening with Trump and his decisions, that's not going to change the fact that I love my American brothers, I love my American friends, and I love my American family. The B Fort, I think you mean the Balfour Declaration? Right. I think you mean Balfour Declaration from 1917. I agree. I agree, which is why I'm choosing to continue visiting the United States, continue with my relationship with American brethren, American friends, American family. And ultimately, I think, I've said it a million times, I think Canada is the greatest country in the world because we have the greatest neighbors in the world. Um, and because of that, I still, well, I mean, whether how much the government is or isn't separate, I think it's more a matter of you need to recognize you can't blame the people for the actions of a government, because if you do that, then at that point you're almost imagining that there's no such thing as a civilian individual, right? And that's the dangerous. Well, what about the Balfour Declaration? Uh, it was 1917. It was kind of, I think, if I recall correctly, it set aside, or it was a declaration setting aside the land for what would become Israel in the Palestinian area, in like British, because at that time British ran Palestine, I believe, right? Um, or it was, I don't actually know if Britain owned that area, but basically it was a declaration expressing support for the idea of a Jewish homeland in what was then Palestine. I don't know. I don't mind Carney. This is becoming political. By the way, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. You can talk about this stuff all you want to on the stream here, but one thing to keep in mind is if you were to join Freemasonry, which I'm not saying you will or not, but I'm saying this to everybody on the stream. One thing you're not allowed to discuss in Lodge is politics. So you can love Carney, hate Carney, um, love Trump, hate Trump, love whomever, hate whomever, whichever politicians. That stuff does not get brought up in a Masonic Lodge, which is another thing I love about Freemasonry. No politics, no religion. Absolutely, but I do mention that to everybody. Because even for me, the fact that I often, politics is brought up, I want to remind everybody that that doesn't mean I discuss this in a Masonic lodge. The Fantastic Five, please hit that like and subscribe button. Fantastic Five, I hope you are doing well. Lush Farmer, what does the Kabbalah and Freemasonry have to do with the Balfour Declaration? Or are you just mentioning the fact that the two of them are connected? Which we're all dipping from the same well, right? Like, yeah, so I don't know what that has to do with the Balfour Declaration. I know a little bit about the Kabbalah. Again, the thing about mysticism, like one thing I think people need to remember, and I think sometimes it's forgotten, is humanity is ultimately dipping from the same well for everything, right? Like, for example, Freemasonry, one of our main symbols, maybe the main symbol of Freemasonry, is the square and compasses, right? Like this symbol here. The square is there, and the compass goes above it, right? You see the square and compass referenced in all sorts of myths from all sorts of different cultures long before Freemasonry existed. In Chinese mythology, Fuxi and Nuwa are both these historical mythological figures, and paintings they're shown holding a square and a compass, right? So the idea that Freemasonry and the Kabbalah would have kind of similar undertones in some places, the Kabbalah has a lot of undertones that are similar to a lot of different organizations and groups, right? It's one of those situations where, you see different organizations when they're developing rituals or when they're developing processes, they're all kind of taking from the same kind of conceptual wells, if that makes sense. Cam, I am an Android guy. Though one of my favorite movies is Steve Jobs. I like that a lot. Right? I mean, Kabbalah was based on the Second Temple era in Jerusalem. A lot of things have been based on the Second Temple era in Jerusalem, or a lot of things reference the Second Temple era. Even Christianity references that era. So, again, sometimes it's more a matter of parallel thoughts than anything else. We're all kind of working from the same place. I believe humanity has a singular well of knowledge and metaphor, and we all dip from it in different ways. I mean, I can promise you, Lush, that is 100% not the case. I know the working tools of Freemasonry. I unless there's something I'm not aware of, I cannot imagine how a square or how a compass, or these are working tools of a Mason as well. These here, got them on my arm, as well as I do not know how those would be used for circumcision. I would be what's the term of the person who does the circumcision? A goyle, I think. I forget. There's a term for it. I'm probably getting it wrong. If that's I forget, whatever the term is for. Okay, moil. I was close. How I don't know exactly how they're doing it, but if they are using a level, I will be shocked and I suppose impressed by their ability to use a level, for example, for such a purpose. There's again, I know what the working tools are. You say they're identical. I cannot imagine how. I mean, I'm looking at these pictures of these tools, and I am not seeing. I'm seeing pictures of these tools right now. I looked on Google. I'm not seeing anything that looks like our tools. So you sound pretty crazy to me there with that one. Um, it has been some places. We've moved into the realm of circumcision. Loosh, I gotta tell you, I cannot imagine where you're getting that idea from, but no, the working tools of Freemasonry. I am very, very confident in saying the working tools of Freemasonry do not in any way look to me like the tools used for circumcision. I just Googled it, which is a strange thing to Google, but I just Googled it. I don't see what you're talking about. And by the way, if that was ever part of a Masonic ritual, I would be out of there very quickly because I did not sign up for that. Neither to see that nor to experience that myself. I'm good. I'm good. But since I'm still a Freemason and have been one for 20 years, um, you know, I don't know if you got any other Freemasons. I don't know what you're looking at, but I think my suspicion, Luge Farmer, with you, honestly, is you have seen, you have either been to or looked at pictures of some clandestine lodges where they have maybe some crazy tools that aren't, legitimate or aren't legitimate lodges that I've just never seen, or you're finding connections where none exist because you want there to be, because I can't see it based on the Google. When I Google searched circumcision tools, I looked at the tools that Google provided me. I don't see any, in any way, shape, or form, they look like circumcision tools. I mean, in the States, keep in mind, the States and Canada have different working tools. To my knowledge, I know all of, to my knowledge, I believe I know all of the working tools in Freemasonry in the different jurisdictions, both in Canadian and American jurisdictions, as well as Europe. So yeah, I would go with raised eyebrow on that one. But even then, I don't see how it looks the same at all. But yeah, a pencil and a pen look similar, but that doesn't mean a pencil uses ink. But I don't see the similarity in the look of them at all. So goodbye, Dad. Thank you for being here. Well, I mean, you may have been to Lodge, Luge Farm. I have no idea. I don't know if you've been to a legitimate lodge or a clandestine lodge. That's one thing to keep in mind because they are different. Uh, so that's something to keep in mind as well, right? Which, and if you've been to a legitimate lodge, which is possible as well, then it could just be that you, for whatever reason, uh, see something in the tools that I just cannot see based on the Google searches I've seen. Um, well, there you go. It's now in my search history forever. That's okay. I'll show people this stream and I'll be like, look, this is what I had to deal with. How do you move up from one degree to another in Scottish? Well, so Scottish Rite, um, you don't have to be invited. You can ask. Honestly, one of the problems, though, is I think nowadays in Freemasonry, in Scottish Rite, they are far too quick to ask. or to invite people. And sometimes people can feel like if they're invited, they have to join, but you don't need to because they just want to get their numbers up. But you don't need to be invited. You can ask to join either Scottish Rite or York Rite or the Shrine. There are 32 degrees, but you don't go through each degree. There are certain prescribed ones that you have to go through to advance. Other ones are optional, and you can choose to ask your lodge to put it on if you want to, or the Scottish Rite group can decide to put it on. And I can't remember now which ones are the actual required ones. To get to the 33rd degree, that needs to be an invite. Right. Well, there are 33rd degrees, but the 33rd degree, that's an invitational exclusive. You can't ask to be a 33rd degree. It's an honorific. So it's like asking for an award, right? You don't ask for an award. Somebody chooses to confer one upon you. So the highest you can go on your own is 32nd. But again, being a 33rd degree, it's a respected thing, but that doesn't mean you're like 11 times the Mason in a craft lodge. A 3rd degree Master Mason will have equal authority and equal kind of rights in a Master Mason's lodge as a 33rd degree Mason. I always like to remind people of that. Now, the length of time, it again depends on jurisdiction. Here in Ontario, it's usually about a year because you go through your Lodge of Perfection, which is your 4th degree to your 15th degree, and it's over a weekend, and you take certain required degrees. Then a few months later, you have your Lodge of Perfection with his 16th degree to 18th degree, and then you go to Hamilton to get your 19th through your 32nd degree. I cannot. I mean, this is the level here. I mean, there's different types of levels as well, but I mean, right? And that level, keep in mind, it was being designed. I mean, Freemasonry dates to 1717 or earlier, depending on. You can 1623. Some people will say, at that time, the level, they didn't have bubbles. They had bubbles. What am I trying? They didn't have the type of level where you put a bubble in liquid and you gauge it, right? They designed the level in such a way as it worked, right, to make sure that they're. So that's why it looks like that. Same thing with, if Freemasonry were invented in 2025, their level would probably be a laser pointer, right? And they use the laser to gauge the level. So but it looks the way levels looked in 1717. Same thing with the plumb rule. Same thing with the square. Same thing with all the tools, right? They look as they looked in 1717 when they were used by stonemasons to create levels within their work, or to make sure that the stones they were using were themselves level. When it comes to 33rd, I understand it being an honorific. I mean, I would call it progressive, right? I would call it a progressive degree. You can pick the term you want to use, right? But I would call it I would call it progressive degree. I think that makes sense. I mean, what else would you call it but that? An honorific degree? Because, in Freemasonry, like, you do have... So, for example, you have an officer progression lineup where you start at one office, like you start at your steward, and then you move up to being the worshipful master. After that, you become the immediate past master. And you get that... Like, you can't advance to the immediate past master. That is something you are given after you've been master. So you could argue it's not part of the progressive lineup, but so you could call it an honorific. I'd call it a progressive. I think I'd say it's part of the progressive degrees. I think that makes sense, even though it is an honorific invited order. Lush, I have no clue what that means. I mean, I feel like King Solomon had a fair bit to do with Jewish people as well as just with the Bible in general. Actually, I want to have a. I mean, he was the second temple, or he was the first temple or second. He was second temple, right? If I'm trying to remember correctly. No, he was first temple. I used to know this. I'm actually trying to get somebody on my podcast to talk about. Yeah, he was the first temple. I'm trying to get somebody on my podcast to talk about King Solomon as a historical figure as opposed to a biblical figure. Yeah, I always get them mixed up. Yeah, he was the first temple. Welcome, Courtney. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful to have you join. I hope you're doing well. So, I mean, yeah, I think it is really not. I mean, King Solomon and the temple are important parts of kind of Masonic lore, if you will. But keep in mind, from whence did Freemasonry derive, right? Freemasonry derived from stone masonry, Masonic guilds. So part of that means that from a ritual perspective, you're going to look at relying on examples of great stone masonry and great stonework. But in this case, in a more metaphorical sense or moral sense. I'm glad. I hope he's doing well. Thank you again for being here, Courtney. I appreciate it. I hope your sponsor's doing well. Hopefully, I will get to meet him when I get to be there for your third degree. But I do hope you are doing well. I hope you had a good lunch, by the way, and I'm sure you're excited. I gotta go to the post office today at some point and get that mailed off to you. So I look forward to you getting it soon. Your card and stuff. Blue lighting. I'm glad you're having a good day. Yes, that taco guy. I'll be there tonight. Well, I'll be crossing over into the States tonight, into Detroit, and then I'll be in Chicago tomorrow morning. Yeah, and I mean, building, architecture is going to be an incredibly important part of Freemasonry by virtue of its deriving from stonemason guilds. So, I mean, the pyramids pop up as well in Freemasonry in different Masonic jurisdictions and different Masonic rituals. Because again, the pyramids are another example of ancient stonework that you can point to as demonstrating the value of stonemasonry, but then also you can use as a metaphor for kind of creating our own buildings. That does sound awesome. That sounds absolutely awesome. I'm sure it was delicious. We are going to give this stream, I think, another 5-10 minutes. Then we'll be jumping off. We'll be back with another stream next week. Well, I mean, Keystone is a stonemason tool. Well, I mean, I think you're probably thinking of Cornerstone, right? Cornerstone is something that's often referenced in Freemasonry. We have public cornerstone rituals, which we do at special buildings. Keystone references like the stone in an arch that holds all the other stones up. So it's a stone in the middle that keeps all the other stones from falling. And so you could, I mean, it's more a stone masonry thing than a Freemasonry thing. With Freemasonry, it's usually cornerstone. Oh, I have no clue how to make an arch. You know, I'm not an engineer by any means. Right? I have no idea how to build anything, let alone an arch. Every arch I would try to make would fall, I'm sure. Is that from King Solomon's Temple, Mr. Keeps on Ticking? Because in stonemasonry, for a time, what it was, to my knowledge, is the cornerstone was the first stone you put down, and then you built everything else around it. And you usually started in the northeast angle of the lodge. In Freemasonry, there's this idea that when you join, you're kind of like a cornerstone. Is the first degree is like the cornerstone degree, by which you then build yourself and the temple that is you through the various Masonic rituals. Okay, so the stone is Jesus in that metaphor, right? And the builders are people. So, you know, the crucifixion, the rejection of him. Um, he built the stone. Yeah, yeah, and so, but again, they're both are stone masonry kind of ideas. The um, the cornerstone tends to be more in Freemasonry. It could be in the Royal Arch degree. I wouldn't doubt it. I'm thinking of the Craft Lodge. It tends to be when I talk about Freemasonry, I tend to talk more about um, I tend to talk more about the first three craft degrees. Oh, interesting. I actually came across in my feed an old school circumcision tool. I suppose actually, Lucia might look a little bit like one, you know, but at a level, probably more like a plumb roll, to be honest. Yeah, I can see some similarities there. But keep in mind, yeah. So maybe there is a similarity there in terms of the shape. Although, what I would say is that would be one tool out of 13. And also, what I'd also say to keep in mind is the Blue House is, you know, you then also have to have a problem with the actual operative stonemasons who use that same shape to, you know, keep their work level. But maybe, I mean, I think the issue with my Google search is I was looking up, you know, 2025 tools used for circumcision, whereas I found a picture of one from, I don't know how old it is, but it looks like from the 12th or 13th century. Lapidem quem. I have no idea. I can't speak. I can't speak Latin to save my life, but I'm assuming um, that is Latin for, you know, the stone that the builders rejected became the cornerstone. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, that makes sense. I can see a similarity in the shape of it. Uh, Maybe in some ways more like a plumb rule than a level. But eh, I still think you're reaching a bit, right? Because it's not, the it doesn't have the point on it. It doesn't have the kind of the string with the weight to draw it. So I'm probably much closer to Rondo's idea, right? A pen and a pencil look the same, but that doesn't mean that the pencil uses ink. Although who knows, maybe King Solomon saw Hiram Abiff or saw a stonemason building his temple with a level or checking his work with a level and thought it looked like a good design and stole it for circumcision purposes or Jewish purposes. I have no idea. But yeah, I guess I can see some similarity in that one tool. I don't think so. I know what occult means. I don't know what occult blind necessarily means. Although what I would remind you of is don't forget sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes a coincidence is just a coincidence. I gotta take off soon. I mean, what I would remind you of, though, Louis Farmer, is one thing to keep in mind as well is I don't know if you've ever heard of. Well, it might be, it might not be. I mean, I have no idea whether President Trump was doing anything nefarious with Jeffrey Epstein or wasn't doing anything nefarious with Jeffrey Epstein, right? I have no clue. What I would say though is not about coincidence. A better term to put it, actually, that I think about. Have you ever heard of the blue car or frequency bias? Right. So there's this study that was shown where, well, I'm no fan of Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong. I think he's not a very good president, but um, that the his ties with Epstein. To what extent he was up to no good with him, I have no clue. But so there was this study done. I can't think of the name of it now. It's called frequency bias. Basically, if you buy a blue car, you're more likely to see blue cars and notice them on the street than you would otherwise. And suddenly, some people start to feel like there's more blue cars than normal, right? With Freemasonry, if all you're thinking about is Freemasonry, right? If that's all you're thinking about, then you're more likely to see examples of Freemasonry and to make connections to Freemasonry that either aren't there or that either aren't there at all or you're reaching for it. Like, for example, when I watch television shows, I'll often see Masonic symbolism in there, but in fact, it's me reaching for it because I'm always thinking of Freemasonry, right? Like, for example, the circumcision tools you were talking about, saying it looks like the working tools of a Mason. I mean, is that because, do I see that and do you see that because you maybe are always thinking about Freemasonry? Because honestly, I don't know if I would have seen that if not for. So it's one of those things where I see that oftentimes. Like, for example, um, there's an insurance company called Cornerstone Insurance. When I first saw that, my assumption was they must be Masonic, but they're not. It's just Masonic. Cornerstone is just a common kind of word that means dependable, and Freemasonry just happens to be one of the ones that uses that word, right? Um, a lot of barbers for their logo will put a razor beneath it and scissors above it to form like a square and compass design. Does that mean they're Masons, or does that just mean that that symbol or that kind of picture um, is consistent, right? It's just a coincidence. It doesn't mean every barber is a Freemason. So I would say, Lush, I think in your case, you may be experiencing and suffering a little bit from frequency bias, which is perhaps because you're thinking about Freemasonry a lot. You're seeing Freemasonry in more places than it actually is, or drawing connections that aren't actually there, just because you're thinking of it all the time. Again, another great example in ancient Chinese culture or Chinese mythology, there is these two mythological figures called Fuxi and Nuwa. Fuxi is often pictured with a square, and Nuwa is often pictured with a compass, and they're pictured combining the two. That doesn't mean that, ancient Chinese culture invented Freemasonry. It's just those tools have a lot of significance in a lot of different cultures for a lot of different ways. Designs have different significances, whether it be Freemasonry or otherwise, right? So sometimes perhaps you are seeing more than is actually there. Thank you, that taco guy. I hope you had a great time on the stream as well. Um, Thank you for being here. Okay. Really? Maybe Ozzy was a Freemason. I did not know that, if he was. Here's the best example I can give you, Lush Farmer, to keep in mind when you're thinking about this stuff. A few years ago, Detroit filed for bankruptcy. And there were all these stories that popped up that the stat that they gave was, if you need an ambulance and you call for an ambulance in Detroit, it will take at least an hour for the ambulance to get to you, right? At the time. And so my friend came up with this joke. He was a stand-up comedian, and he said, if you get shot in Detroit, you're better off calling for pizza than an ambulance, because the pizza will get there in half an hour, and you can, ask the pizza driver to drive you to the hospital. So he gave that joke, on set locally here in Windsor. A few days later, The Daily Show, this national televised show, made that exact same joke on its on television. That doesn't mean that The Daily Show stole. That doesn't mean The Daily Show stole the joke from my friend, nor that my friend, later stole the joke from The Daily Show. It just means there's a common understanding of the idea of pizza half an hour or less. So I hope that makes sense. Sometimes coincidences are a thing. Sometimes coincidences in design, coincidences in mythology, coincidences in whatever else it might be, right? Those are the same thing. And yeah, it looks similar, but it looks similar to a lot of things and a lot of tools, not exclusively. So I would be very hesitant to say that those similarities are relatively significant, because it looks similar. Honestly, what it looks similar to me, and forgive me because this might sound a little bit, for the squeamish, you can cover your ears. What that tool looks more like to me than a level is the tool you use for cutting cigars. So take that for what it's worth, but, does that mean Freemasons are involved in cigar making? Or I would say it looks more like that than a level. Lush Farmer, if that makes any sense. Well, I mean, I'd rather there be just zero sex offenders, period. So, you know, keep that in mind. But yeah, even as I described a tool for cutting a cigar, I clenched a little bit or crossed my legs. But yeah, that is what, to me, that's what that tool looks like, much more so than a level. I'm also not sure why Auslander is bringing up SO offenses in the stream, other than I am opposed to SO. I'm opposed to crime I'm opposed to crime, and I'm going on record saying it. But keep in mind we're all kind of drawing from the same well. That's right. I'm taking a very brave stance. Taking a very brave stance. I'm opposed to crime. You can record me on that. You can if you would like to, you can quote me. I'm not embarrassed of my stance. I know it's brave and out there, right? I think what Auslander is trying to say is some racist stuff about the proclivity of African American or black men to commit more crimes than white men. What I would say is just because somebody is registered does not mean there are many people who have unfortunately committed criminal offenses who are not registered. It may be a matter of white sex offenders being under policed. I think that might be very possible. So keep that in mind. Or having access to more lawyers and more legal representation and getting away with more stuff. Well, I don't know about slashers, but there you go, says Spirit of Justice. Yeah, but keep in mind, Auslander, once again, you know, just because one of the things to keep in mind is, you know, is it that the white SOs might be getting away with more because they have better access to lawyers or whatever it might be, right? And they just have better access to those things, or they're just getting away with it because they are not policed as much as perhaps other communities. And, not everybody who is convicted of a criminal offense is guilty of that offense. They are guilty in the eyes of the law, which it should be that way, right? If they're found guilty by court, they're guilty. You have to consider that. But that doesn't mean necessarily that there aren't biases in play in terms of the finding of guilt versus innocence. I don't know about slasher movies, but I really want to watch Courtney. I really want to watch Weapons. I really want to watch him, and I really want to watch The Long Walk. Spirit of Justice. I'm black. Spirit. Maybe leave some women for the rest of us, please. Stop stealing all the hearts, because it doesn't leave anything for the ugly guys like me. So I'd appreciate it if you would stop doing that, Spirit. Because I can't steal a heart to save my life, but I'm working on it. So if you'd, stop stealing all the hearts and leave some for the rest of us, Spirit, I would appreciate it. I feel like that's probably not true, Auslander. To the extent that courts are biased towards anything, it seems to me they're biased towards who has the money to be able to afford decent representation. I feel like you're making a lot of assumptions in there. I have no idea what the teen pregnancy rates are in the United States. However, the idea that they're boosted by SAs seems questionable to me. Seems quite questionable to me. But, in fairness, the one thing I've noticed is it seems to me, I don't know what your political persuasion is, Auslander, but it seems to me that there's kind of a contradiction amongst the right wing in that they seem to often be promoting the idea of childbirth, but then and teenage pregnancy or teenagers getting pregnant. Seems like there seems to be amongst the right some almost celebration of that, while at the same time using teenage pregnancy as like a moral failing of the person who's pregnant. So that does not seem. It seems like unhealthy contradictions in there somewhere. Unfortunately, Lush Farmer, I think that is often the case. Yeah, more money, more privileges. One of the things I love about Freemasonry is that it does not afford privileges to men based on how much money they have, right? You can be making $20,000 a year or $100,000 a year or $1 million a year. You know, if the person making $20,000 a year is the worshipful master of the lodge, then he is the worshipful master of the lodge and he is of a higher rank, office, than the person making $1 million a year. And if he bangs his gavel 3 times, the person making the $1 million a year needs to stand up, right? And the person, you know, and again, I am sure of that because I have sat in many Masonic meetings, again, and events, over 1,000, and I've seen people who I know are well off financially, um, you know, responding to the directions and the instructions of a worshipful master who I know to be less well off financially. So it's one of those situations where it's very hard for me to you know. So that's one of the things I appreciate about. I appreciate Freemasonry does not make distinctions. When you say cult, David Mentier, what do you mean? Like, how would you define a cult? Right? Because the issue with, like, the way I understand a cult and the way I typically define it, and why I think Freemasonry is not a cult, is a cult requires a devotion, a intense devotion, if you will, to a person, to an idea, or to an object, right? And cults are by their nature not democratic because, you know, intense devotion is not a thing you can vote in or out, right? Like, if I'm a cult leader, I'm not giving my authority up for a vote. I'm not saying, okay, you need to, you know, it, it will be, the understanding will be my devotion, my authority comes from God, comes from a religious figure, comes from spirituals, it comes from something that is beyond your ability to vote for. Freemasonry, one of the best things about it is it's democratic, right? So we do not have intense devotion to any one person or idea. Even the worshipful master, he has a 1-year term, and then we find somebody else who has a 1-year term. So, but what is, like, I don't feel particularly controlled by Freemasons. Like, I control in what way? Even, you know, like you know, there's rules and bylaws. So, for example, when I go to a Masonic meeting, I have to wear a suit and tie. That's in Ontario. That's not in other locations, for example. But I guess what would be the control that Freemasonry exerts over its members? Well, but that's control. Do you mean control of the information? Because again, I've talked about this before. Like, everybody maintains certain levels of control over their information. Like, you know, you're not going to share with me your bank information. Does that mean you're controlling me? Right? Privacy does not equate with control. That is another very good point that Courtney makes, and Courtney's absolutely right. And Freemasonry, in a cult, it's very hard to leave. They're not open to letting people leave often. In Freemasonry, nobody is required to stay if they don't want to. They are welcome and allowed to leave at any point, right? So that's another very valid point that Courtney makes. All right, I'm going to give this another couple minutes, but then I do have to run. I still have to pack um, my stuff. Well, I mean, without facing any repercussions, right? Courtney, members can leave Freemasonry at any time for any reason without facing, I mean, any repercussions, with the exception of they're no longer a Mason. But beyond that, there's no other repercussions to leaving. Let's give this, like I said, another couple minutes, and I'm going to jump off. And to Oslander Rouse, who is there somewhere, one thing I would uh, just say is, once again, one thing I would mention about Freemasonry is the beautiful thing about Freemasonry is it welcomes men of all different faiths and religions. No, I agree with what Alexander Rose said. I'm not saying that there's a celebration of teen pregnancy by adults, but I do think sometimes it seems like with teen pregnancy, there's this weird kind of. On the one hand, they'll celebrate the idea of teen pregnancy, or they'll celebrate teen pregnancy, but at the same time, they'll use teen pregnancy as some type of like moral failing of the teenager who got pregnant, as opposed to just something that happens in life and you have to deal with it, as somehow they're like a moral failing for being pregnant, as opposed to, which I'm not a fan of, that kind of moral judgments of teenagers who are pregnant. Um, Well, I can't speak to Orlando, Florida jail. I've been to Orlando, Florida, and I love it there. Orlando's a great city. Um, I mean, I suspect that that's not the case. I got to be honest with you, Oslander. I suspect that that's not the case. Not today, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. I will not be doing a 1 a.m. stream. Let me know if, because I tend to do those not on Friday at 1 a.m. and not the Monday at 1 a.m. So it's Monday 1 p.m., Tuesday 1 a.m., Tuesday 1 p.m., Wednesday 1 a.m., Wednesday 1 p.m., Thursday 1 a.m., Thursday 1 p.m., and then Friday 1 p.m. I didn't get locked up. No, no, I never got locked up. What I'm saying is I've been to Orlando though, and I loved Orlando. It's an incredible city. I worked in jail actually. I worked in a jail for about 5 years. I was a rehab officer. So what I did is I worked with people who were about to get released from custody in terms of things like housing, food, um, trying to get them work, trying to get them set up job interviews or rehab centers or get them connected with their probation officer. But no, I've never been arrested because I'm super boring like that. But I will say, at least in my experience in custody, as a working in custody, um, it tended to be, at least in my area, pretty. The population in custody seemed to be roughly equivalent to the population outside of custody. So, majority, it seemed to kind of fall in line, except, more First Nations, which again, I think potentially goes to show problems with over policing or bias in the criminal justice system. You know, I got locked up for stealing hearts, just like Spirit of Justice. I got locked up for stealing hearts as well. Because with a face like this, I'm stealing all the hearts, let me tell you. Or Ozlander just made a mean comment about Orlando. I don't know. What I'll say is I liked Orlando. I've actually never been to like any of the really touristy parts of Orlando. Like I've never been to Disney or Epcot, or at least I don't remember ever going. Whenever I went to Orlando, it was always to visit Masonic. It was to visit Masonic lodges or Masonic events, or the Grand Lodge of Orlando or Florida had their annual communication in Orlando. I loved it. I remember though I went there and I went to my hotel and they had a pool outside and my room wasn't ready, so I said I just hung out by the pool. Anyways, I took my shirt off next to the pool. I fell asleep. I woke up like 2 hours later. I had the worst sunburn uh, I've ever had. Like it was brutal. I remember I was in a lot of pain the next couple of days. I was not prepared for the Orlando sun. Stealing all the hearts in Orlando, Florida. Absolutely. Stealing all the hearts in Orlando, Florida. That's what I do. Well, I mean, again, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. I love Windsor's downtown. I love it. I think Windsor's an incredible city, but there are issues with, um, people using drugs, people using alcohol, people homeless in our downtown area, and the people using drugs and alcohol and stuff, at least in downtown Windsor, there are some people I see who look First Nations or Indigenous, but the majority seem to be white based on what I'm seeing when I pass by on the streets. So I think it depends on just what your population demographics are in your town, right? Well, in fairness, Auslander, now you understand. Now you understand the way I feel as a Freemason. People tell me, all these conspiracy theories about it, which do not comport with what I've been seeing in my day-to-day life in Freemasonry. But unfortunately, there are a lot of streets right now. A lot of towns and communities are experiencing homeless crises and crises of people living on the streets with drugs and alcohol and things like that. It's not unique to Windsor by any means. It's happening in a lot of towns across Canada, as well as the United States, as well as all over the world. Um, All right. Well, I think we're going to be ending this stream right now. Thank you for everybody who has taken part. I hope everybody is doing well and having a great time. And I hope you all have a great weekend. I cannot wait to be in Chicago with my Masonic buddies. I will be sharing pictures and posts and all that stuff. So check those out. And thank you everybody for being here. Mr. Keeps on Ticking. Like I said, no 1 a.m. stream, but I'll be back next week. And I do have an episode being released this Sunday at 6 p.m., which I hope you will check out as well. All right, guys, thank you so much. I'll talk to everybody later. Unless I want to check something quickly. Oh. Oh, hold on one second. I saw a bunch of stuff that I didn't see before. Cameron, have you tried the new Star Wars? Courtney is a guy's name. Courtney can be a guy's name. You know, it's kind of like Kelly. Kelly's a guy's name as well. My job is this, so I'm trying to make this my job because I love talking about Freemasonry. Here's one thing I will say, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. I know I said I was about to leave, but then I just saw this pop up. Freemasonry, like the Freemasonry to which I belong, is a fraternal organization. So it is for men. However, I do want to remind people there is the Order of Women Freemasons, and there's also Eastern Star, and there's Rainbow, which is groups and organizations for either women or young girls in Freemasonry. So youth, I should say, young women, ages 9 to 21. And even there's D Molay, which is a Masonic youth group for young men, ages 9 to 21 as well. So yes, 90% of the time, Mr. Well, there's Job's Daughters, which really I don't think it's active in Canada anymore. I shouldn't say that for sure. It may still be Job's Daughters, but the primary Masonic youth group for young women, at least in Canada, to my knowledge, is Rainbow. Certainly in Ontario, it's International Order of Rainbow. In the States, I believe Job's Daughters is a little bit more active. I think, I'd have to double check with my dad, but I think my mom was a member of Job's Daughters growing up, because my grandfather was a Freemason. And so I think she was a Job's daughter. And I mean, Job's daughters may have died in the Bible, but my mom made it through successfully. So I think she survived to have me at the very least. So I would never diss Terry for that reason. I am not. I know very little about religion. I know very little about the gospel. I am a Freemason. I talk about Freemasonry, but Freemasonry is not a religion. We have no gospel. We have no gospels. To be a Freemason, you must believe in a supreme being, and that supreme being can be, whatever you choose. Primarily, so we have Masons who are kind of Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Indigenous or First Nations, Sikh, Hindu. I've even known a couple Wiccan, Wiccan Freemasons. So. But I would, in my experience, like I said, I think Job's Daughters is less. Like I said, I think Job's Daughters is less prominent even in the States than Rainbow. But I'm not sure about the numbers. I don't know if things are getting worse, Lush Farm. I don't know what you mean by things getting worse. I think things might be getting better in the world, which I tend to be more pessimistic. So, sometimes I have a hard time seeing that, but, well, that's Royal Arch, right? And that's not even all of the orders of Royal Arch, or not all of the degrees. I mean, when I say Freemasonry, I tend to be there's the Masonic family, but I tend to, at least when I'm referring to the craft lodges, it's those first 3 degrees. And Royal Arch is one specific. And to be fair, I have known of non-Christians who join Royal Arch because sometimes what you'll see is the term Christian being liberally defined in the same way some will define supreme being in different ways, right? But Royal Arch is a subset of Freemasonry, or one of the orders within. It's not Freemasonry itself. You can be a Freemason and be of any religious denomination, or not even religious, just spiritual, right? That includes Scottish Rite, that includes some of York Rite or Royal York Rite, that includes obviously the craft lodges, etc., etc., etc. Hey, none of that, John the Baptist. Courtney is a very good person, and I'm proud to have him part of the stream. So I'm going to have to time you out. You think the military, the police, the courts, and the prisons are made to protect and help people? I do. Now, that doesn't mean every person who joins the military or the police or the courts or the prisons are joining for the right reasons or are joining because they want to protect and help people, which is unfortunate but true, that oftentimes that is not the case. But people are fallible, right? Institutions can be created for the best of purposes, but that doesn't mean that the people who then join those institutions are doing so for the best of reasons. Well, I mean, I personally am not a fan of the tough on crime approach to things, but a lot of people are, and those policies end up deriving into creating more and more prisons, which is very unfortunate, but that happens to be the way it is often. But I would prefer more focus on rehabilitation and community engagement. And honestly, Lush Farmer, one way that we could have less prisons being built is if we had more civic engagement and civic organizations, including Freemasonry. So I think if we had more Freemasonry, we would need less prisons. That is at least my opinion. I try to mean well. Whether I succeed in doing well or doing good is a whole other can of tuna, but I try my best. Right? And I think for me, I mean, everybody finds their own way to try to make the world a better place, or hopefully you find your own way to make the world a better place. For me, I think that my way is Freemasonry, or the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. And if you think I mean well, then I hope that you will be so kind as to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll take it, Lush. I'll take it. I mean, here's my view on it. This is something I've said before. I don't know if you're a fan of professional wrestling or not, Lush, but somebody once said, look, I can't convince you that Freemasonry is, I can't convince you that Freemasonry, or sorry, a professional wrestler said, I can't convince you that professional wrestling is, that the people who do professional wrestling are tough or are real. But I can convince you that I'm real. And I kind of view that with Freemasonry. I can't convince you that Freemasonry is good, but hopefully I can convince you that I'm good. And if I convince you of that, then maybe, or at least that I try to be good. And if I convince you that I'm trying to be good, I'm failing often, but I'm trying, then um, I've done my job. And also, Lush, you know, part of being a Freemason, or part of doing what I do, this isn't a rule for Freemasonry. No Freemason ever has to defend Freemasonry, and they should not be expected to. You know, if you're walking down the street and you're a Freemason, and you hear somebody talking smack about Freemasonry or talking negatively about it, you as a Freemason have no obligation to go and talk to them, right? That's not a rule. You're welcome to go on your way and live your life. For me personally, I feel like because I love it, I have a responsibility to talk about it and try to defend it and try to talk about why I think it's so important. But the benefit of this stream is when I talk to people who dislike Freemasonry, you know, it makes me better able to defend my position by having that back and forth. It makes me better at understanding why I love Freemasonry, and also makes me better at arguing for or against things, right? So, Lush, like, I really appreciated you being on the stream, even though it sounds kind of amusing to talk about it. You know, I appreciate you being on the stream and bringing up the idea that specifically the one working tool of Freemasonry, the level, saying that looks like a circumcision tool, because I never heard that before. I had seen modern circumcision tools, so I had no idea what you were talking about, because all the modern tools I've seen don't look like that. But then, again, I did a Google search, I went down, I saw some older tools, or a older tool, which, you know, looked similar. So again, that's a new thing I've never heard before, which I could, now that I know that, I know that's out there, I'm more prepared for the defense of it, right? Which, again, my defense is certain tools look similar. That doesn't mean they come from the same place or same purpose. But also, again, to me, while there are similarities, if you were to ask me what it actually looks closer to, it looks closer to a cigar, the tool you use to cut cigars, right? So does that mean the cutting of a cigar and the people who make those tools have anything to do with the Jewish faith or with circumcision, right? I would say no. So just because things can look similar, especially in historical context, doesn't mean they're actually the same. And again, Lush, the example I would give is Fuxi and Nuwa are two Chinese mythological figures. You hear them counted thousands of years ago. They are seen in pictures with a square and compass. That doesn't mean ancient Chinese invented Freemasonry. It's just a fact that sometimes we're drawing from the same well and using the same symbolism to convey different ideas, or in the case of this, to do different practical purposes, right? Whether it's the cutting of a cigar or circumcision, or, you know, determining whether or not a shelf is level. You know, there may be practical ways to design those tools that are going to exist between different segments. I hope, Lush, you don't have to agree with me, but does that make sense? The cigar cutting to circumcision to using a level on a shelf analogy? And also keep in mind when Freemasonry was created, right? Again, if Freemasonry was created in 2025, the level would probably be a laser level. So potential similarities in design do not indicate, well, but I think the point is the esoteric, we're all dipping from the same well. So we're all, like, our myths are going to be the same across the different, like, no two myths are exactly alike, but the myths are going to have certain commonalities and certain similar messages because we're all kind of living on the same earth and experiencing the same things. And thank you, Rondo, for um, saying I'm a good guy. Again, I try my best. I don't always succeed, but I try my best. And I think you're a good guy as well. And Courtney, again, I try to be good people. I don't always succeed, but I try my best. And if you guys want to support me anywhere else, you can support me through Patreon, patreon.com/square and compass. All right, guys, I got to finally get to work, so I'll see everybody later. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of the day.